Sounds like the opening of a bottle. Gather groups of all kinds of people under the one roof of a pub. The pouring of pints will be a sight to behold for those eagerly waiting to collect their drink. But the question is, do people actually think about the process of creating a pint?
To be honest, not much. Like when I go to a bar, I just go for the drink.
No, I wouldn't think about it too much, to be honest with you.
But is it something we should think about? Especially if it has any implications for the good of our planet.
Brewing industry, traditionally, it is quite an unsustainable practice.
Majority of the impact in terms of energy consumption and materials resource for beer often tends to come in packaging up and transportation.
So let's find out how breweries are dealing with their unsustainable practice, especially with packaging and transportation, and if there's any potential trouble brewing for the industry as well. Our first stop is Hope Brewery in Holt. This microbrewery implements on-site sustainability practices such as lowering their water usage, with their hot water tank receiving reheated water that was used to cool during the brewing process with their heat exchanger. Hope also have solar panels for energy efficiency during the brewing process as well. At the end of this process, a problem breweries have is what to do with their spent grain to prevent it being a waste product. Head brewer Richie Hamilton explained how Hope deal with this issue.
So after we've strained all the liquid out of the malted barley that's going to go on to become the beer, we have what we call spent grain. It would normally be a waste product, but we actually send it to a local farmer who mixes it in with feed for his cattle. And so that's, I guess, one of the sustainable practices in a small brewery.
Preventing spent grain being a waste product by going local helps deal with waste and transportation emissions. Going local also helps Hope with their transportation emissions from their brewing ingredients and raw materials. But Richie also explains the challenges of when they can't go local for this and in other areas.
We've made an endeavour to use Irish and local ingredients and materials where possible. Probably the best example is the Hookhead series Minch malt. So that's mostly grown in the southeast. It's malted in Athy. It's what we call base malt, which means it would make up the majority of any given brew that we do, 70 to 80%. The rest of what we use would be called speciality malt, and unfortunately there is no Irish producer significant of speciality malt, so we get that from Germany, occasionally from England. With the rest of it, there's no hops grown in Ireland, unfortunately, so we do have to get them from America and occasionally from Europe, depending on the style of beer that we're brewing, so that's something that we can't really mitigate. Similarly, with the cans that we use, again, no Irish producer, and they come in from Europe mostly. The same goes for bottles.
Another challenge for Hope comes in the creation of their non-alcoholic beer, which is more energy intensive due to the need for heating the beer by pasteurizing it.
The main difference, though, is that at the moment we have to pasteurize it because it's essentially a beer where the fermentation is stopped early so that we don't produce as much alcohol, but that makes it dangerous because if there was anything in the can, there's a lot of sugar in there that could be fermented and you could get overcarbonated or alcoholic or even exploding cans. So we have to send it to be pasteurized. We don't have a pasteurizer here. Pasteurizing itself is energy intensive, and we also have to ship it on top of that down into the Midlands to do that. So all in all, there's a lot of cost, financial cost and energy cost added to making this beer.
The final challenge for Hope is how do they ship all their beers to their customers through pubs in the most effective way.
We're quite a local brewery. Most of our beer is sold in a very close radius. We like to use this little, we have these little blackboards that we hang around the taps. A lot of our beer is sold within a very short radius. And I think the bars really like that. They like that people are just down the road. So we usually have, brewed 3, 4, 5, 6 miles from here. And so that reduces our impact as well.
But not every brewery delivers their beer in the same way. This is Priory Brewing, another microbrewery and social enterprise located in Tala that is set to open in May. What sets Priory apart from the likes of Hope is that they are a brew pub. which will deliver their beer straight from the brewery on site through their serving tanks. Delivering their beer in glass and on site reduces their transportation and packaging emissions. Priory also implement similar sustainability methods on site like Hope. Head brewer Ricardo Solis explained these methods.
So here in Priory Brewing, we are a small brewery, local brewery, but focusing the sustainability. So we're trying to reuse the water that we are using. We're trying to give to the community our co-product, like the spent grain. And soon we're going to be open, and we're going to start having more relation with the community as well. So basically that's all what we're doing here.
We visited 2 microbreweries, but let's go to a brewery on an even smaller scale inside a shed located in Crumlin. This brewing process begins with a stock pot, with tap water being poured in before being heated up with a gas burner. The barley is then poured in until it is heated up enough where you can remove it and add hops to the remaining liquid. This is then sent to the fermenters, which allow the alcohol to be formed. The dropper can pour this liquid out and the alcohol level can be tested to see if there's enough alcohol. Once it's ready, the beer is bottled with used bottles from other beers before being left for a few weeks until the final product is ready to be poured. This shed belongs to Mark Hamrady, who is not only a home brewer but also a lecturer in sustainable design at the NCAD. Mark also carries out similar sustainability practices to our previous breweries by giving his spent grain very locally to his own chickens. Mark also gave his views on the work being done by Hope and Priory.
So in comparison to, say, some beers like that might come from Japan and be traveling all across the world, maybe even kept cold in that transit, a local brewery like Hope is actually making beer in its locality. Now, while it's still packaging and shipping out kegs to pubs, they're taking away a lot of that impact of transport and long-term refrigeration, and they're paying attention to efficiency because it's also a cost, it's energy costs, it's money. While you can't control everything in a process as a microbrewery, you can't control, say, the likes of what your pasteurization supplier is doing or having to transport at a kind of local regional level to do that. You can make a lot of informed changes, which are good business sense as well as good environmental sense. When you look at other aspects, more like social enterprises like Priory Brewery, they're actually not only just engaging the community in terms of social sustainability, but as what might be called a brew house or with a tap room, that beer gets packaged and moved a matter of meters rather than kilometers. It's served on site. The packaging and refrigeration costs are only going to be what's needed to serve it. You don't have huge storage, you don't have huge energy expenditure at every stage. And what you have is people in a locality getting beer made by people in that locality and really kind of connecting us maybe back to more connected consumption in that respect.
Our next stop is DCU in Glasnevin, where another sustainability expert gave their views on the work being done by Hope and Priory. Our expert from DCU, Samantha Fahy, noted the difficulty in the likes of Hope sourcing their hops locally and believes this is an issue that could be solved with some assistance.
It would be interesting to see what supports could come from government to help farmers come up with ways of growing the hops and the other materials that these local industries actually need locally, because somehow our sustainable future is going to be much more locally focused, much less materially consumptive, and will try in its best and will have to protect and restore nature. So we'll have to have that holistic perspective of it rather than importing all of the things and, these trade tariffs, how much will they impact, and trying to create ourselves as much more of a food secure country. And I know beer is maybe not food, but it is very important as part of our culture to ensure that we can have a sustainable culture going forward as well.
Samantha is an advocate for cans to be aluminium, and while it's not perfect, they can be recycled again into that form. But she also believes a bigger concern is to find a way to locally source these cans.
The cans, they are a concern. Yes, great to be aluminium because you can actually recycle aluminium cans into aluminium cans. But if we have to import them from Europe, then you do have those extra emissions that come with those transport emissions that are bringing them in. They will be very high in energy consumption as well in trying to smelt down the aluminium and make them back into cans. But it is a material that can actually go round in circles. So you don't have to go mining for it again or getting it back out of the ground. So it would be much better to be recycling it. Are there other options like glass that could be pasteurized and reused? I don't know. I imagine an awful lot of these companies have looked at it. The weight of glass is an awful lot heavier than the weight of an aluminium can, and so your transport costs would be much higher if you were to go for glass ones.
Hope faced further transportation problems with their non-alcoholic beers pasteurization problem. An issue again Samantha feels could be solved at home.
So you've got the emissions of sending it abroad and then turning around and getting it to come back and then presumably packaging it on bulk at home. It would be lovely to see that there are other companies in Ireland that are actually pasteurising. Could there be some sort of facility for shared? So for instance, any of the dairy factories, they're all pasteurising. Is there something that could be done together? An awful lot of this is how do we make Ireland more resilient so that if our supply chains go down or if these things change, that we don't actually destroy whole sectors of our industries that are actually doing stuff. So I think we need to think and box a little bit more smart than what we have been doing to date. So the idea that sustainability has to be a collaborative exercise. So we have to work together, not so that we can beat the next competitor, but that if we were to actually collaborate together, we can raise all boats so that we can actually all have a sustainable, a stab at a sustainable future.
Collaboration is something brewery and social enterprise Priory are focusing on with their community. This is an idea that Samantha believes is needed for a sustainable future.
It's lovely to see that one of the breweries is a social enterprise. The idea that we need to work together with our community because we are going to absolutely need our community to come together and work together to actually have this sustainable future for everybody. And so reinvesting your profits into your local community and involving your local community is a great way of building that network and building that resource and the resilience that we will need to face the challenges that are ahead.
Our final stop is Unshaw, a pub on Candom Street. We've heard from the breweries, we've heard from the experts, but what about the public themselves? We know that they don't think much about the brewing process, but another question is, would they pay more for a more expensive beer if it was more sustainable?
The sustainability wouldn't enter my mind. I'd pay more for a drink that I'd like the taste of. Maybe it's a treat or something like that, but I wouldn't buy a beer considering how sustainable it is.
I'd pay a bit more probably, particularly if I thought it was providing local jobs and local work.
I would like to think I would, but just with the rise of prices of drinks at the moment, it's just kind of getting really crazy. So I have to admit, probably at the moment, probably no.
The idea of Priory Brewing being a brew pub and a social enterprise was encouraged by our experts. But do the people feel the same way?
I like the idea of it. Whether it would hit my pocket would be a question. So it depends on the cost.
Absolutely. Like as I say, I'm from a small town in Donegal, and I've seen how one local publican with a passion has managed to drive that into creating local jobs, given a local flavour. Beer is beer, and we all have our own favourites. But at the end of the day, whether you want that money to be going to some corporate American crowd or a local business that's providing local jobs, I know where I prefer to see my money going.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It would only add to the diversity of pubs in the city.
Breweries look like they will need to rely on being more community focused and looking locally, especially to deal with the issues of emissions from transport and packaging. However, when finding this solution, it will be important for the breweries to consider the potential cost of a more sustainable drink to their customers and potentially look for ways to give back to the community for their potential support. Pubs gather the people under one roof, and breweries will need to gather the people under one idea: a sustainable future for all.